Hello everyone, welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Dynamics 365 Security and Licensing Updates, What You Need to Know. I'm Sebastian Anderson with the Licensing and Database Desk here at Avantico, and we have a huge topic on the menu for today, one with implications for every corner of the D365 world. To guide us through these massive changes, we have Morten Løgstrup, our Director of Customer Engagement and resident expert on all things licensing related. He'll be walking us through EA renewals, true-ups, and the recently announced licensing pricing changes, cost-saving and optimization strategies for D365 licensing, real-world examples of eliminating compliance risks and aligning with Microsoft's new licensing enforcement for 2025, and a Q&A session at the end. Morten will be taking over shortly, but before we dive into today's session, I'd love to share some of the other exciting webinars and events we have coming up. First, on Tuesday, May 27th, join us for Freight Reconciliation for Dynamics 365 FNSCM. You'll learn how Avantico's solution automates freight invoice reconciliation, gives you real-time visibility, and enables full control of your shipping costs, all within D365, finance, and supply chain. Next up, on June 5, we'll be featuring the 10.44 Service Update webinar, where you'll see live demos of the most impactful 10.44 updates, get practical insights on the 2025 release cycle, and learn how to align new features with your roadmap to maximize your return on investment. For those of you in the EU, we'll also be at Dynamic Minds from May 26th to 28, where we'll be presenting From Manual to Magic, a guide to AMCS, Avantico's D365 solution for automating complex accounting across multi-entity organizations. We have more events and webinars coming up in Q3, so do be on the lookout for those, and be sure to let us know in the chat if there's anything you would really like to see from us in the future. All registration links for these events will be made available in the chat and on our website. One last note. As we go along, do not hesitate to pop any questions you have into the chat, and we will answer them in the open Q&A at the end of the presentation. This talk will also be recorded and distributed in a follow-up mailer for easy viewing later on. And with that, Morten, take it away.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you everybody for joining. My name is Morten, and I'm here in Los Angeles. Been working with Microsoft licenses for the last, give and take, 8-9 years. And oh lordy, it changed every month. But I think that the changes that Microsoft recently announced is probably one of the biggest cost impact for those customers that do not have their D365 security design really well narrowed down. I'll talk shortly about the announcement itself, and then some of the unknowns that I see or that we see. I'll give you a couple of examples of how you can do a basic self-assessment to see where you actually are today. And then I'll go into some details around a more advanced security and licensing analysis. I'll give you a couple of examples from other customers, and then at the end we will share some promotions and important links. And as Sebastian said, please just drop any questions you may have in the chat, and I'm sure Sebastian and others can pick them up. We can take them on the fly, or we can save them for later. The reason why I'm saying it taking on the fly, that there is a couple of different screens that you might have questions to. So I'm happy to address as much as possible that I can for this session. I hope when we are done here in the next give and take 45 minutes, that you leave with a good impression of what's going to happen actually starting tomorrow, April 30, and then what's going to happen August 30. But also you get a little bit more familiarity with some of the tools already in place and then keeping an eye out for updates coming the next I would say 2 to 3 months or something like that. Um, but let's jump into it, unless there's any questions so far. But so what happened a couple of weeks ago, Microsoft released an announcement, and that's about licensing enforcement. There has never been licensing enforcement for D365 finance and supply chain, meaning you could have, let's say, 200 users in your system and only have 50 licenses purchased. And don't ask me why, but it has been speculated for many years that, hey, it will come, it will come, it will come. And now it finally announced that on August 30, users cannot access D365 Finance and Supply Chain without having a license assigned to them. And I'll go through a couple of steps later on. Already tomorrow, you can expect some updates and changes in the Power Platform Admin Center. There's some links later on in the slides, but if you're not familiar with that, I go through a couple of examples, but it's in there that you will get access to different reports. And as far as I see right now, there's definitely some unknowns. Hopefully, Microsoft is providing some clarity to that over the next weeks or months so that customers can actually prepare for this enforcement on August 30. If we look at the impacted SKUs or applications, they are all listed here, and most customers are likely on the finance and supply chain with some touch point to project operation. But it's primarily those applications that are impacted. What does that mean? We'll go into that. But what I do not understand right now, that's the level of enforcement. And as most people probably is aware, there is different tiers of licenses. There's a full user, as we call it. There's attached licenses. There's team member. There's activity. There's devices. There's many different licenses. But what I currently do not know is if a user actually is required, let's say a full user based on their security model in D365, can they actually still access if they just have a team member or vice versa? In some examples, we also see that a customer or a end user need multiple licenses, for example, finance as a base, supply chain as a attached, commerce as a attached, project operation as attached. Do they actually enforce every single attached license? We do not know yet, but hopefully we will get some clarity the next days. Speaking from experience, where we see most customers being impacted, it's most of the time for users with a large footprint, like hundreds of users, if not thousands of users, or customers that have been live for many years. Because when you implemented, let's say in 2017 or 18 or 19, you went and implemented one security design. If you have not updated that security design over the years, Microsoft have changed what you could do with the different security roles, meaning if you were a team member in 2017, you might actually be a full user in 2025 if you haven't changed the underlying roles and activities. So that's where we see most people are being impacted, and it can be significant. I'll show you a couple of examples. So what will happen? As far as we know, if you have a license, you're good to go. And again, it might not enforce what level of license you have, but we will figure that out the next couple of months. If you do not have a license, you need to contact your admin and get a license assigned. If you do not have them, you need to purchase or you need to reassign. Let's say there was a license assigned to a previous coworker or something, and then you can actually reassign. But For most organizations, I think this is a good step because there have been such a gray zone for many years where customers actually haven't been compliant and in risk of audits and so on. So now what this means, it's going to mean that you have to assign licenses similar to how you are assigning, office licenses and VCO and so on and so forth. So, but as of now, users without a license, they cannot access. So expect some feedback from users if you haven't assigned. I'll show you how to assign it later. Most of you probably already know, so I don't want to take too much time on that. Any questions so far?
Looks like we've got a clean slate. If anyone would like to
Good.
post a question, you're welcome
Yep.
to.
So let's jump into some basic security license assessment that you can do on your own. It's like a self-service health check, so to speak. If you are familiar with the Power Platform, you can jump into admin.powerplatform.com and you can actually get a good amount of details as of now. You do need to have a Power Platform admin role assigned to you via Azure. Otherwise, most of these boxes will be blank. But if we start over here, and this is just an example, if we start over here and click on billing, then licenses, and then you can drop down to finance operation, there is an okay dashboard as of now where you can view the different users that actually is needed that need a license. And you can also see what specific roles that they have assigned that require them to have a given license. And right now, as we have seen from multiple customers, there is some data discrepancy here that is not 100% correct, and some of it are being duplicated, and there is some issues. Hopefully tomorrow, when you roll out a new update to the admin center, we will actually see some changes. You can also go in here and export all users to CSV, and that give you, it probably takes 5 to 10 minutes to run, and then it gives you a breakdown over all the different users. What is not in here is recommendations. And back to what I mentioned earlier, if you have been live for a long period of time or someone have assigned new security roles to a user, it drives up the license, but there's 0 recommendations in here on how to actually, for example, get 500 full users down to an activity user or down to a team member and still being able to do the processes they need on a daily basis. But you can export it. You can get some more details, try it out. It gives you at least a little bit of insight, and you will most likely also see, hey, we actually have not assigned our licenses, but that is going to change. I'll show you that in a second. If we take a look at what happens if you click on view role licenses, Microsoft have defined it in a base 1 and base 2, and it has not 100% clear to me what the difference are, other than it could be pricing, because we know finance premium is more expensive than finance, but it doesn't really make sense. It's in both places. So that comes back to, I think we will see some changes, that will clean up some of these screens, so it makes it a little bit easier to understand what's actually going on. Hopefully that will come already tomorrow. If we, for example, let me go one back. If we click on view user right next to, you will see a screen that actually takes you into your production environment. You can pick that, you can pick a sandbox and so on. And then we will get a list of users. And environment type, you have production, you have the name, and then you have the security roles that are driving the license, and then required, and it's not assigned as of now. Back to my point, let's see. In this case, it's fairly simple, but in most cases, your users will have many security roles assigned to them, or what we often see, custom security roles. and the custom security roles are probably the main trigger of moving people from a lower SKU to a more expensive SKU. But again, there's no recommendations of what they're doing or telemetry. You can actually use some of the telemetry in D365 to figure out what the user actually have clicked on, what modules, what tiles they have clicked on the last 90 days, and then map that up with their licenses to figure out what is actually the best optimal role assignment that drives the license. We'll go into that in a little bit, but Tatiana from our team, she's working more on the back end where we do the heavy analysis on this.
Right. So we do have a couple of questions here in the chat initially. One of them from Andrew Herbert. Is there a way to block the notification that users will be getting about license non-compliancy from non-system administrators?
That's a good question, Andrew. I do not know because we have not seen it yet. But Sebastian, let's take that back to the licensing team and figure that out. That's a good question.
That
But
sounds good.
I do not think it is. And think of it like this: if a user don't have a Office 365, let's say E3 license, they cannot access Exchange, or they simply say, "Hey, you cannot do anything until you get a license." I think that is the same thing that will happen.
Right. There's another one from Testa Sean. How does this affect external/guest users' access?
Good question, Sean. It should not affect them at all because external users don't require a license if they're not in the production environment. So we can look into that, Sean. Yeah, that's my initial question, because most of the time they don't need a license. So you should be good for now. And the same, for example, if you're using the vendor collaboration portal, external vendors don't need a license in D365. So there should be absolutely no interruption.
Right. A question from Deepak Bopudi. Does this also hold true for D365 F&O on-premise implementations, or is this purely a modern cloud situation?
Oh, that I actually cannot answer. I have not seen an on-prem install since before 2017. We at Avantico, we rarely touch on-prem installs. But we can definitely check on that as well. I do not know the answer to that, but I would expect. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Right. And it looks like a couple of the other questions here are a little bit longer, so we will absolutely address them toward the end of the chat. We just might want to move on for the moment. We will come back around to you toward the conclusion.
Yep. Okay. So if we jump to the next chapter, let's say that you have to purchase some new licenses. You have to purchase 10 new licenses, 20, 40, 50, whatever that might be. What you definitely need to do is one, you can also check this right away if you have the right access. You can go into your admin portal where you assign all your different licenses, and go in there and check if any of your finance, your supply chain attached, and so on have been assigned. In, I would say, 8 out of 10 customers we work with, they have not assigned any licenses, but in here you can definitely assign them, and it's fairly easy. You can just click on it and assign, just like from anything else. What's important, very important to mention, when you have assigned new licenses, you always have, or purchase new licenses for that sake. If it's just a few, it doesn't have a big impact. But if it's a good chunk, we definitely recommend that you go into your LCS and then update your subscription estimator. And if you go to LCS, if you click on this little hamburger here, there is a drop down that says subscription estimator. And in the subscription estimator, you can actually enter in the right number of licenses. And this is something that is important, especially if you have been live for a longer period of time, or if you have done a acquisition and purchased the new business with 100 users or whatever that might be. Because when you first went live with finance and supply chain, your partner had to submit a go live checklist to Microsoft, and he had to update some different data in here, including transaction data. And if that is very outdated, it might impact your production sizing on the back end. So let's say that right now you have 100 enterprise user, 10 activity, 10 team member, and 10 device. And that was entered in when you went live. But now 1 year later, 3 years later, whatever that might be, you actually have you have purchased the triple account, and it's not reflecting in here. What happened when you update, as far as we know, there's no concrete information, but what we have seen from other customers, when you update the subscription estimator, your production environment is actually being resized by Microsoft automatically, which can give you a more performance, more AOSs, and so on. It's we can help with it, but it's definitely important to have in mind or check it. Hey, how does it look? When was it last updated? And so on and so forth. That's important when you purchase new licenses. Any question to that section?
Let's see. There's one that I believe will have pertinence for a lot of people. We will also address other questions later. But we have seen from Jeff Austin, we've seen numerous instances of incorrect reporting in PPAC, false positives, essentially. Are there any thoughts as to when Microsoft might get this corrected or looked at?
Good question, Jeff. What I have seen, there is a couple of standard reports, and they look very AX9, AX12 look alike. I should actually have brought up a couple of examples. We can include that in the slide deck when we send it out. But what I have seen is the standard reports, you cannot count on them. And don't ask me why they're even available, because it doesn't reflect the reality. In D365. I think it's some legacy reports from AX that was brought over to D365 finance and supply chain. So the two standard report I'm thinking of top of mind, they don't reflect on what you actually need. The discrepancies, and that's one part of it. The other part of it, right now, hopefully that will change up until August 30. The discrepancy between users in D365 and what you actually see in Power Platform Admin Center, it's not 100% accurate. But we have a solution for that, and I'll go into that more detail a little bit later. So hopefully there will be some better reporting. I don't think, to be honest, that you should expect excellent reporting. Because there's so many systems that are tied together that it's hard for me to see. Hopefully that answers your question. We jump to the next one. I have a short chapter about this because we do not know if Microsoft are going to enforce your database entitlement, and for each license you purchase, let me actually start here. For each license you purchased, there is some accrued database entitlement. And that goes across Dataverse, so all your CM applications, your Power Platform, and so on. It all comes with different entitlement. And this is from the licensing guide. There's a link at the end of the slide deck. But you accrue every single time you purchase a license, you accrue some database capacity. What Microsoft introduced, I would say 4, 5, 6 months ago, they introduced this very nice dashboard. If you go to the same Power Platform admin portal, having the right role, Then you can click on resources down to capacity, and then you can actually see your up here, the first one, database, that's for Dataverse, the first three rows here. And down here, you can see how you are doing when it comes to your database for finance and supply chain. And for some customers, they have been over with hundreds and hundreds of percent, which then lead us to, hey, let's help clean this up or figure out what's actually going on. But when you purchase new licenses, you automatically get more entitlement to these different things, and you can actually click over here on the little arrow up here to the right next to 228 and see how your entitlement accumulated. If you click on the finance tab up here in the top, you actually get a little breakdown of how many production environments, sorry, you probably have one, how many sandboxes, UATs, and what tables is actually accumulating up to the different entitlement. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you are over, this is just over with a couple of 25%, 24%, which is not a lot. But we do see some over with 500, 600, 700%, which can be very, very, very expensive. One thing I want to emphasize, we do not know if Microsoft are enforcing this. As far as I know, they are not. But we have seen this bar being implemented the last, I would say, 4 to 5 weeks, where they say you are actually losing some functionalities or something like that. We have not seen or heard from anyone that they actually are hurting from this. But it is important to keep in mind, and you should definitely reach out if you want some help figuring out how you get compliant again. Any question to the database, Sebastian?
Let's see. One that seems pertinent to a database is the capacity for all your environments, like a test environment, or just the production environment?
Really good question. And let's include an example in the slide deck when we send it out. So Microsoft, if we talk strictly finance and operation, they have two different licenses. They have a non-production license, which is $30 per gigabyte, and then they have a production license, which is $40 per gigabyte. So if you compare it to your iPhone, it's like, wow, this is very expensive. The non-production prices, you can only purchase them in increment of 1,000 gigabyte, meaning retail price. I'm not talking about enterprise agreements and so on, but from a retail price standpoint, that's $360,000 a year for non-production data, and 480 or something for production data. But you can buy them in increment of 1 gigabyte. So yep, they are looking at both. And you can see that if you click on the finance and operation, you get a really good breakdown. But I'll put a slide in here around that as well.
Excellent. And one more quick one that seems pertinent to a lot of people, I would imagine. Can you bulk assign users to a particular license? Say you're going in and remediating issues. Yep. Can you bulk assign?
Yeah. Yes, you can. And you would do that with a PowerScript or PowerShell. I don't have an example, but I show you in a second when we go into the more advanced. And it's a pain in the neck if you have to assign 1,000 or something licenses, unless you have the script. And I don't know if Tatiana is on the call, but she is normally handing over those scripts to our customers when we do the licensing assessment. So yes, that's possible. That's the short answer.
Okay.
Let's move on. So I just talked a little bit about the standard assessment you can do yourself. You can do it right now, but I'll definitely maybe take a screenshot of how your admin center look today, and then see what's going to change tomorrow. I do not know when the update will come from Microsoft, but most likely when we wake up here Pacific time, we will see some changes. Now I want to move into a little bit more advanced security and licensing analysis that we typically do for customers that want to get this narrowed down before there's actually multiple reasons to why they want it. But it's a good exercise to go through. So why are we suggesting the advanced, especially if you have a lot of users in the system? If you have a EA renewal coming up or step up coming up, we can help you reduce either the license you need or get a better understanding of how are you looking today. And I'll give you an example in a second. But why are we doing it? In the basic tool, there's 0 recommendations to how can you actually fix this. Most of the time, we see users having a lot of extra security roles, which is driving up the licenses. And one example, we saw a customer that had 800 users that was available that could write checks and approve checks. And their security tool and the ISV tool, I don't want to mention the name, didn't pick up those things. And that is extremely risky from an audit and SOX and so on, the security and duty perspective. There's also the risk of overpaying. I can show you an example of that in a second. And in some cases, we are currently working with a client where we actually have to do a little bit of a business process redesign. And that comes back to when they implemented things was, hey, we can easily do this. We just need to customize A, B, and C. Where we are like, why are you not following the standard process in D365 for this? And normally they tell us, oh, we did not know. And then we have to kind of redesign some of these processes so they can actually fall into some lower tier licenses. The process itself, it only requires 30 to 45 minutes from your side. And then on that call, we are extracting 3 different Excel sheets from D365. And who knows if Microsoft are building that type of reports? I highly doubt it. At least not short term, maybe long term. Then we put it in our security and licensing cleanup engine, and give and take after 4 to 5 days, we have a presentation ready for you with a lot of underlying data. So the bigger D365 finance and supply chain user footprint you have, the more data you will see, and potentially the longer it will take us to help you clean up these security roles. Any questions, Sebastian?
Let's see. No new
Oh,
ones so far.
okay.
We will address again some
Good.
of the previous ones toward the end of the chat.
Good. Because this is super important. So this is an example from an enterprise customer. They have give and take 3,500, 3,000 something, give and take users in the system. And when we did the analysis, you can see we provide them, there's more info to it than this, but we have the overarching report. We have the PowerShell script we talked about, how to assign the licenses. We have a lot of different categories where we actually dig into what's driving these licenses. I'll show you an example in a second. But if we start here in the blue column over here, SKUs, we have the different licenses. You're familiar with all of them, I assume. What we discovered, that was those numbers in production, and then this was actually the paid licenses. And as you can see, there was a massive delta. And that comes back to if we are just using retail prices in the next column, that they were uncompliant with give and take $170,000 a month. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Because when you sign the customer agreement with Microsoft, there's some different policies stipulating that you need to be in compliant. But it's not the end of the world. It right now we are handing over the remediation. We have gone through some different cleanups, and it looks completely different now. So it takes, depending on how you can call it, how bad it is, or how much cleanup we need to do. It can be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks of cleanup activities. Uh, what this also tells me, and we will see that in a second, that this has most likely gone on for a period of time. Plus, a lot of users have a lot more access that they actually need. And if we jump over to this is just the tab from the role licenses, and I mark some of them with yellow, and you can see up here the column B, C, D, E, F. That's the different licenses. And then you have the security roles, and a lot of these roles are actually custom roles. And if we just pick, for example, down here on row 33, quality control. So it drives a supply chain full user, and there's 872 people doing quality control. That is very uncommon that you have that many people doing that. Another example is sales tax admin. It's a custom role. I cut it off a little bit here, but it is a custom role in their case. And it's also very unusual that you have almost 900 people being sales tax admin. And we can go on, buying agent, for example, a custom role again. According to our analysis, it actually, the users, the give and take 1200, 1150, they need finance, supply chain attached, project attached, commerce attached. And we are like, whoa, that's a lot of licenses. Let's figure out what we can actually do to trim this down, and how many do actually need to be a buying agent, and so on and so forth. Any questions, Sebastian?
Let's see. So one from Jeff Austin.
Yep.
Do you envision a time when Microsoft will get rid of the supply chain finance differentiation and move to a generic base and attach roles for those two areas?
I'm not 100% sure I understand. So from a licensing perspective, Microsoft started with called unified operation. They changed the name many times, but in unified operation, you had all the bells and whistles from retail, from what's called finance, supply chain, and so on and so forth. And over the last 4 years or so, they have broken it out to D365 finance, D365 supply chain, D365 project operation, and done that to make it a little bit easier for customers to pick the products they need, and for implementers only to implement what's needed. I know when you look in D365 Finance, you still actually have access to commerce and so on, even though you don't purchase D365 Commerce standalone. So will that happen? I think if we are talking about enforcing inside D365 Finance and Supply Chain your access to, for example, commerce functionalities, I think it will be grayed out. That's the only thing I can see from a technical standpoint that can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And on a more technical note here, one from Matt Peterson. Is there a report that defines which users need licenses based on security roles? Like a report that you can generate a little more quickly, perhaps?
Is Tatiana on the call?
I believe so, yes. At least,
Tatiana,
yeah.
Tatiana, can you? So I know
You,
we
you,
are
you,
generating those reports, but
you
is
want me
that
to answer?
possible out of the box?
It is possible out of the box, and there is a new. Do you want me to share?
You can do that. Yeah, please.
Okay. So I answered this question in the chat. There is a new feature. The feature is called use security governance. you need to activate it if you are on 1043. If you're on 1042, unfortunately, there is no way. But on 1043, you can find a feature. This feature was released in April 10th, generally available. So it's very new. Yes, you can ignore this preview, even though it's a preview, it's still working. User security governance, and once you activate it, you see the user security governance section under the security in system administration module, and there are two very useful reports. So the first report that gives you a lot of information to analyze is, and it takes time. I'm sorry, it takes time to create. Yes, they're slow, they are not effective, but they're quite accurate. So it's a security analysis report. You need to rebuild it. It takes about 30 minutes to rebuild, and this is Cantoso, so it's out of box. You will see roles, sub-roles, like our regular breakdown. This is a permission, what we used to have as a view permission. You will see the licenses here. You can filter, you can analyze, you can make a decision. So this is for all roles, and the breakdown by user, a very useful breakdown. You select a role, you see what users are assigned to this role, a duty, what users have this duty, and so on down the stream. Yeah, that's me. The second useful report is the license usage summary. That's another one. So you need to rebuild two data sets. One is the previous rebuild that I showed. It's the same one, that the previous one. And the second one is rebuild licenses. Here, you see how many entry points trigger a certain license. So let's take any of the Cantoso users. For example, this one.
One note here, if everybody is a little bit confused about operations, back in the days, the license was named D365 Operation Plan or Unified Operations, and I think that it's going away in D365 because now it's finance and supply chain. So it's a little bit, it can be a little bit confusing. Why is the operation? Because you cannot purchase an operation SKU today.
Right. So operations is unclassified. This is unclassified. What MSFT keeps doing is they take all menu items and they classify. This menu item is a finance item, this is an activity item, this one is a team member item, and so on and so forth, right? They go through the all items and they try to classify them. Operations isn't unclassified yet. So yeah, it's coming. If you see operations, you can classify as any full license. If you have finance, operations will fall under finance. If you have supply chain, it's gonna fall under supply chain. And what you can use here, and the question was how to identify for each single user what licenses they have. This is the report. So let's say that's a good example, right? We know this combination, finance and supply chain. So one license should be a base license, another one is an attached license. You decide which one is which one. The suggestion is, you see, the supply chain is a base license, the finance is an attached license.
Prices there too.
Yeah.
The retail prices. Yeah.
Prices, yeah. Again, as I mentioned, if you haven't updated your 1043 over last weekend with the new quality update, it's working. If you have updated, unfortunately, Microsoft is in the middle of the transition. So it's not going to work if you have updated. They will release another update, and in the next update, it's going to combine both sources of information, Power Platform and FNO. This one is just FNO. Like in the next release, it's going to be both of them. But anyway, the answer is yes. And here you can calculate, you see the calculation based on this report. So if you're lucky if you're still on the old version. Yeah, you can explore it. Yeah.
If you go one back, Tatiana, and hopefully that will be updated too, because when you look at the bottom part here, basic finance, basic supply chain, and so on, just stay here. Currently, you cannot buy 15 finance licenses. There is a minimum of 20. But further down it says finance and supply chain, but it's the attached one. Yes, you can buy them, but up there you cannot buy 15 finance unless you already have 20. So there's some things that hopefully will be tweaked over the next period of time.
Right, and I encourage people to explore this feature because it has lots of the things that we didn't have before, right? And you will see video on YouTube. You will see guidance from Microsoft. So there is a temporary role assignment, which is unclear even for us how it's going to work. You can temporarily assign a role from to. Does it require a license? Hopefully not. This one does require approval. Another temporary assignment for the privileged users. You know, you have a subject matter expert. You trust this subject matter expert 100%, and you assign the role without an approval here. Again, does it require a license or not? We don't know. Still don't know. So go ahead, explore this part. It's very powerful.
And feel free to ask us any questions you might have after your explorations take you where they will.
Absolutely. Do you see the screen again, Sebastian?
Yes, it looks like we're back on your slides, Morten.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you. Yep, we are digging into this. Just to wrap it up here, we are digging into the different roles that are driving the different licenses, and then going through some sessions with you to figure out how can we actually optimize this so that you are licensed correct and according to your budget and so on and so forth. This was then the outcome. If we start over here, that was the amount in production, March 25. This was the current paid. And after we did, I think it was 3 rounds of cleanup and redesign of the different security roles, we ended up with these proposed numbers to the customer. And as you can see, in this case, we actually reduced the overall licensing spent quite a lot. So they were happy not only because of the 3-year agreement they are about to enter into, but also because of the external audits and internal audits, and then it also gave them an opportunity to change some of these custom business processes that could actually be done with standard functionalities and processes in D365. Good. The last slide is pretty much a promotion. We have 2 different offers. When you have done your own self-assessment, if you think, hey, I would like some help, you can reach out to either Sebastian, to me, to Amantico on the contact, and we can help you do a security and licensing analysis. We can also help you assess what's driving, for example, the database size if you are over and want to get that reduced. So that is something we can do. We have dropped a couple of important dates. If you know, it takes us 4 or 5 days to do, but the remediation can be 4 to 6 weeks. So if you think, this is looking very bad, we highly encourage you to get started, because it seems like there's no going back as soon as you get past August 30. So it can be a pretty significant undertake. Let's see here. And then we have some different links here. We'll send it to you. Q&A, Sebastian?
Yes.
Yep.
We have had an almost unprecedented number of questions here, so let's go back and answer a few of the ones that we may have missed in the beginning.
Mhm.
So, from Dean Peters, in terms of the alerts as to whether a license is not correctly allocated, will the messages for those appear on the WMS app on scanners?
Hey, Dean, let me check on that. I don't have a clear answer, but it will definitely check and get back to you. Good question, Dean.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. What sort of license would need to be assigned for users that have from Lenning Till, what license would need to be assigned for users that have a system administrator?
So hey, that's also a really good question. Accordingly to the April 25 licensing guide, if you are only system admin, you actually don't need a license. What we do see is, I would say, depending on the size of your organization, that there is, I would say, between 3 and 8 or 10 or something clean system admin, and but we also see users that are system admin and, for example, 2, 3 other roles, they actually need a license. So I would encourage you to make them very specific. Yeah, depends on what they have signed. I can share some examples with you.
Right. One of the ones I alluded to earlier that's a bit longer from Anas Ruz. A few follow-up questions regarding license access and platform integration. So if a user's access is blocked, has Microsoft simplified the process to restore it, or is it still required to go through the lengthy re-verification/reservation process?
I'm not 100% sure I understand that question.
Let's see. So it could be, and Anas, if you're still here, please feel free to provide some clarification for what you may be asking. But the question may be about if a license is falling short of what it needs to be per Microsoft's terms.
Mm-hmm.
Has the process been changed in any way for restoring that, or as far as you know, is it still
Oh,
the same as it usually
uh,
is?
if I understand you're correct, and I'm just bringing up an example here, if a given user need finance, supply chain attached, project attached, commerce attached, and so on, it's the same process. You need to purchase the licenses either via enterprise agreement or CSP, and then you have to assign the licenses in admin center. Last year, I believe it was, Microsoft removed those capabilities in your Azure portal. I thought it was a little bit easier in the Azure portal, but it's the same way as you assign different Office licenses, Power BI licenses, and so on. Everything have to be done in the admin center today. But what I do not know, and I mentioned that in the beginning, I do not know if Microsoft enforce all the attached licenses as well for a given user. I do not think, but who knows? We will need to see what they are coming out with a little bit later.
Right. And then on to the next part of Anas's question. Has Microsoft resolved the known issue where the assigned user in the Power Platform Admin Center does not match the corresponding user in D365? They say previously this mismatch caused a break in license enforcement and functionality, especially when using Power Platform.
Uh, for finance and supply chain, I saw discrepancies earlier this morning. So my short answer to that is no. What I hopefully we will see some changes already starting tomorrow, because April 30 they should release some more functionalities. So short answer, not 100% working.
Right. Now, once more from Andrew Herbert,
Yep.
talking about how will device licenses specifically be handled? How will they be assigned? Will users still be prompted like for a remediation, even though they fall under the user pool for a work center using
Yeah.
PFE and material movers using scanners?
Yeah. It's a really good question, Andrew, and I'm taking that because it's very similar to what Dean was asking. I'm taking that and following up. It's a really good question. I do not know as of now, and I don't think Microsoft know because I couldn't read anything about it. But
Right.
I'll get back to you all on those two questions.
Okay,
And I
I
think
just
we had a
saw
couple more.
Andrew. Oh, okay, good. You've got your thumbs up there. We'll move on for now. Um, what about from Rudy America? What about ICT staff users who might have an account in the production environment? Do they also need a license?
Tatiana, do you know the answer to that?
Oh,
If you're still with us.
yeah, I'm here. For what kind of also trying to answer questions behind the scenes in the
Yeah.
chat. For what kind of access? Sebastian, can you?
Yeah. Let's see. If there doesn't appear to have been any further clarification, Rudy, if you're still here, would you mind clarifying what sort of access you're concerned with here?
Yeah.
Let's see. If that doesn't pop in for a little bit, we can perhaps. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Rudy's investigating, checking out problems. While that's going on, let's perhaps hop over to some of the other ones here.
Mhm.
Or, okay, Rudy says, for instance, questions from users. Um,
Maybe we should take that offline. I need some more information.
yeah,
Uh,
that sounds good.
yeah.
Please,
Yeah.
we'll be in
Yeah.
touch, Rudy,
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
follow-up to your question there.
Yeah. Thank you for
All right,
bringing it in.
great. Let's go on down the list here.
And Sebastian, just a thought of mine. We will take all the questions, we will summarize them, and we will give the as good as we can answers to those, and send them when we send the presentation. That could be one option. I know we are a little bit short on time here, and people probably have to move to the next meeting.
Yeah, that is a fair point.
Yep. Is there other good ones? We can probably answer one, two more.
Okay, that sounds good. Let me go ahead and scan through here. All right. From Christina Vandenberg, when you assign security roles to existing users in D365, will it alert you that the user doesn't have a license assigned for that role? For example, going from activity license to supply chain management, HR license, or to an HR license? Additionally, if you have SCM, HR, and then add a project operations role, will it alert you to add the project operations license first?
Good question, Christina. And to be frank, I don't think it will. But after 70, I think right now it updates every 72 hours, the current report we see right here. And that comes back to this currently no recommendation on what you should actually do, what license you should assign first, and so on. I don't expect that kind of detail to be part of the first releases, but hopefully that's something we normally help the customer with when we do that licensing analysis. So right now, I doubt it, highly doubt it. It will tell you. It'll just give you the information in here, who need what and why. and there's still some discrepancies in the information that doesn't really make sense. So hopefully we will get more info tomorrow, but I think the short answer to your question is no, unfortunately.
Right. And then as the final question, something quick that may still be of value to folks. What decides if it should be a finance base or supply chain management base license? If a user needs both, does it really matter? What is the base and what is the attach?
So the base from a cost perspective is $210 retail price, and the attach is $30. And oh man, there's in deep in the licensing guide, there's a link to that. Here, there's a whole where is it? There's a whole metrics that detail, what a team member can do, what an activity can do, what a finance user can do, what a finance premium user can do, and so on and so forth. We could actually, then yeah, it will be easy for you either to go to the licensing guide or give us a call, and I'm happy to go through the guide with you and explain in more details. It's 65 pages and it's a very fun read. Not. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, and with that, I'll say that for the moment
Yeah.
at least, this presentation has come to its conclusion. If we did not get to your question directly during this talk, we will be following up with you individually afterwards, and we'll give you perhaps a chance to clarify any further questions and get to the bottom of any issues. But we'd like to thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic and huge webinar, and we appreciate all of you showing up for it.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.